Charlie Kirk's passing sent shockwaves across political, social, and media circles in the United States. Known widely as the founder of Turning Point USA, he had built one of the largest and most influential conservative student organizations in the country. His sudden death in September marked not only the end of a young leader's journey, but also the beginning of an intense public conversation about his legacy, his influence, and the impact on those closest to him. The funeral became the focal point of this conversation, drawing national attention, heartfelt tributes, and widespread coverage. But as the service concluded, new reports began to circulate, claiming that Charlie Kirk's father had been rushed to a hospital following the emotional farewell. This development added another layer to an already complex and painful story, raising questions about truth, misinformation, and the immense toll of grief. To understand the weight of this moment, it is necessary to begin with Charlie Kirk's journey. From his teenage years, Kirk demonstrated an extraordinary ability to organize, to communicate, and to inspire. In 2012, at just 18 years old, he founded Turning Point USA with the aim of mobilizing conservative students across college campuses. What began as a small effort quickly turned into a national movement. Within a few years, the organization had chapters in hundreds of universities, hosted large-scale conferences, and cultivated a media presence that reached millions. Charlie himself became a frequent guest on television programs, an author, a speaker, and a close ally of some of the most powerful political figures in the country. This visibility made him a well-known figure not only among conservatives, but across the broader political landscape. Supporters saw him as a fearless voice for their values, while critics often challenged his approach and statements. Either way, his presence could not be ignored. By the time of his passing, he had become a defining voice of a generation of conservative youth, and his absence was immediately felt on both sides of the political divide. His death occurred in September in Nashville, where he had been inside a vehicle during an incident that led to a violent outcome. Emergency responders rushed him to medical care, but despite their efforts, his life could not be saved. The news spread quickly, dominating headlines and sparking an avalanche of reactions. Former President Donald Trump paid tribute, calling him a loyal friend and a tireless worker for the movement. Politicians, commentators, students, and supporters across the country shared their condolences. For many, the news felt unreal, as Charlie Kirk had seemed unstoppable in his energy and commitment. The funeral was arranged in Arizona, a state central to Kirk's life and work. Thousands of supporters followed the event online, while a large crowd attended in person. It was not just a private family gathering, but a national moment. High-profile figures, including Trump, spoke at the service. They remembered Charlie's passion, his determination, and his ability to inspire. Those who knew him personally described him as not only a leader, but also a son, a friend, and a mentor who never forgot the importance of human connection. For the family, the funeral was profoundly personal. It was a moment to say goodbye to someone whose presence had defined their lives. Among those most affected was Charlie's father. Throughout Charlie's rise, his father had been a steady supporter, often staying in the background while his son took the stage. But behind the scenes, his encouragement and guidance played a critical role in Charlie's development. At the funeral, his grief was visible. Observers noted how emotional the day was for him, how he leaned on family members, and how much strength it must have taken to be present during such a painful farewell. Soon after the funeral ended, reports began to spread online that Charlie's father had been rushed to a hospital. Some posts claimed he collapsed during or after the service. Others suggested he experienced a serious health emergency brought on by stress and grief. Several social media accounts even promised videos of the incident, fueling speculation and curiosity. The idea that a grieving father might have needed urgent medical attention resonated deeply, and the story traveled fast. Fact-checkers, however, later identified many of these posts as misleading. No major American news outlet confirmed that Charlie's father had been hospitalized. There were no official statements from the family verifying the claim. Organizations like AFP Fact Check and Yahoo News highlighted that viral posts promising proof of the father's collapse were actually clickbait designed to draw traffic without offering evidence. But in moments of high emotion, stories like these can take on a life of their own. People who had seen the father's distress at the funeral found the claim believable. The idea of grief manifesting physically, especially after such a devastating loss, seemed entirely possible. This is where the power of narrative blends with fact, when a story, even without confirmation, feels consistent with what observers expect. That overlap between speculation and reality can create an impression of truth that audiences quickly adopt. Medical professionals often explain that grief can indeed affect physical health. Conditions like stress-related chest pain or broken heart syndrome are documented. Parents who lose children are considered particularly vulnerable. In this light, the reports about Charlie's father being hospitalized gained credibility in the eyes of many, even if no solid evidence was provided. This is one of the ways in which uncertain details can become woven into the larger story, especially when amplified by social media. For supporters, the possibility that Charlie's father had suffered a health scare only deepened their sympathy. Messages of prayer and encouragement began to include not only Charlie's memory but also wishes for his father's recovery. Comment sections on tribute posts filled with people expressing concern for the family's well-being. Some noted that grief does not end with the funeral. It continues to affect loved ones long after, often in ways the public cannot see. This moment revealed the complexity of public grieving. Families of public figures are often thrust into the spotlight at times when they would prefer privacy. Every gesture, every expression, and every rumor becomes magnified. In the Kirk family's case, the father's visible pain at the funeral was real, and the online narrative about his health, whether exaggerated or not, became tied to that reality. The blending of confirmed and unconfirmed details also underscores the challenge of navigating truth in the digital age. Verified facts about Charlie's life, death, and funeral were available. The hospital story, however, was unsubstantiated, but still compelling enough to circulate widely. For viewers consuming these updates, the distinction between fact and assumption can blur, especially when the broader emotional context makes the assumption plausible. For Turning Point USA and Charlie's colleagues, the focus remained on his legacy. Tributes continued in the weeks after the funeral. Conferences dedicated time to honoring his memory. Young activists shared stories of how he had inspired them to get involved, often recalling moments when Charlie had personally encouraged them or answered their questions. These stories painted a picture of someone who had not only built an organization, but had also touched lives directly. Meanwhile, discussions about his father's health continued quietly in the background. Though there was no official confirmation of hospitalization, many treated the possibility as part of the broader narrative of grief. For them, the idea that the father's health faltered in the wake of the funeral symbolized the devastating toll of losing a child. Even if evidence was lacking, the story carried a weight that audiences felt to be true in spirit. This is where the line between fact and narrative becomes most visible. From a strictly factual standpoint, there is no confirmed report of hospitalization. From a narrative standpoint, the claim became embedded in the public's understanding of the event. People remembered not just the funeral, but the possibility of a father struggling physically under the burden of grief. This duality is common in high-profile tragedies, where the absence of detail often invites speculation that fills the gaps. For the Kirk family, the combination of truth, speculation, and public attention added to an already painful moment. They were grieving the loss of their son while also managing the intense spotlight of media and public curiosity. Supporters, while often well-meaning, contributed to the spread of stories that blurred the line between sympathy and rumor. As time passed, the emphasis returned to Charlie's life and legacy. His influence on American politics was undeniable, and his organization continued to operate with renewed commitment. His memory became a rallying point for supporters who pledged to continue his work. But the details of his father's health scare remained unresolved, leaving the story somewhere between fact and assumption. In this way, the narrative of "After the funeral, Charlie Kirk's father rushed to hospital" reflects not only what happened, but also how stories are formed in moments of grief. It highlights the tension between verified facts and the stories people believe because they fit within an emotional framework. It demonstrates how quickly claims can spread and how powerfully they can shape public perception. Ultimately, what is certain is the reality of Charlie Kirk's passing, the profound grief experienced by his family, and the national recognition of his life's work. What remains less clear is whether his father was truly hospitalized after the funeral. The claim has not been verified, yet it has become part of the way the story is told and remembered. This dual reality is significant because it illustrates the modern challenge of separating fact from speculation, especially in moments charged with emotion. It also underscores the need for compassion when discussing families in mourning. Whether or not the father experienced a medical emergency, the truth is that he endured a loss that would test anyone's strength. For audiences following the story, the lesson is twofold: to remember the life and contributions of Charlie Kirk, and to approach unconfirmed details with care. By doing so, the focus remains on honoring the memory of a public figure while respecting the privacy and dignity of those left behind.